Talk Radio, you're in to all things music.
Welcome to Intersect Radio, where music, faith, and life converge. With your host, Aaron the A-Train Smith.
Intersect Radio here. It's a beautiful summertime here in Nashville. The season of the year we all love and look forward to here in Nashville because we love the humidity and mosquitoes and all that sort of stuff. But here I am in my nice air-conditioned room today, and we have a great guest on the show today. That tune you heard was a tune by my guest, Miss Lindsey Miller, guitarist extraordinaire, vocalist, songwriter. I've known Lindsey now for maybe 5 or 6 months. I've had the pleasure of doing a couple of great gigs with her, and I asked her to be on the show, and she agreed without hesitation. I was glad about that. And here we have it today. After arranging everybody's schedules, we finally meet up, and I'd like for you to all meet and greet, say hello to Miss Lindsey Miller. Hello, Lindsey.
Hey, Aaron. How's it going?
It's going great now.
Cool. Awesome. Yeah.
How's it going with you?
It's going good. It's July in Nashville. It's hot and muggy. So yeah.
Air conditioning. It's a must.
It's a blessing, definitely.
It is. Thank God for giving that person the knowledge of air conditioning years ago.
Absolutely. I appreciate it, definitely.
Yeah, where will we be now?
Right.
So you've had a busy summer so far. I've seen some stuff on Facebook where you've been working over at Jazz Workshop and teaching and stuff.
Yeah. I think last week I taught. They do an annual 1-week summer camp for high school age students, and I think this is my 3rd or 4th year as a faculty member teaching at the camp. So
really?
So yeah, great. Yeah.
Huh. So you've been here in Nashville that long?
I've been here. I think it's been 6 years. It'll be 7 years in October. This coming October. Yeah.
Whoa.
I know, right?
I was doing some stuff over at the workshop. Do you know Kevin Medill?
I do. I know Kevin very well. He's a great guy, great player.
Yeah, and Connie.
Yes.
I was doing their jazz vocal class there.
Oh, great! Yeah. No, they're great people. I just played with Kevin a couple weeks ago, and I think I played with Connie back in February. So yeah, definitely.
Cool. I don't know how we missed each other then.
I don't know either. There's a lot of people in Nashville. It's like you know who they are, but it could be years before you ever play with them just because of how the circles of musicians kind of intersect with each other. So yeah. So you're not the only one.
Okay.
So yeah.
So how many students did you have?
Well, I'm not sure how many total the camp had. Let's see. I think I taught this year. I taught 2 classes. I taught a class called Jazz Styles and Analysis, and then I direct an ensemble there too. So those were my two responsibilities this time around. And then in past years, I've also taught the guitar students, but this year, however it worked out, the guitar students all graduated and there weren't any this year, so I didn't have that one to do. So
did they graduate to bass?
Yeah, good question. No, I think they graduated to college.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, no, they graduated out of high school.
Oh, okay, gotcha. I got you.
Gotcha.
What songs did your ensemble do?
Oh, that's a great question. These are all kind of, I think some of them were mostly junior high, maybe freshman in high school. They played the Sonny Rollins tune, Tenor Madness. Mm-hmm. Then they played, there's an alto sax player, his name is Bobby Watson, and we did a song by him called That's All Folks. And then we did Footprints by Wayne Shorter.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
What venue was that in, the final performance?
They do that. No, they do it at Vanderbilt. The camp has grown so much and gotten so large, they actually outgrew the workshop facility, so they transferred over to Vanderbilt in their music building. Mm-hmm.
That's great.
So, yeah.
I was quite surprised to see you in those video clips.
Oh, really?
I was like, I know her.
Yeah, sometimes I get weird questions, like people are like, are you taking a class there? I'm like, no, I'm teaching the class there. So yeah.
That's cool.
Mm-hmm.
Man, well, so tell us about Lindsey Miller. Where'd you come from, grow up, and that sort of thing?
Yeah, I grew up in a suburb of Kansas City. It's called Prairie Village, Kansas, which sounds very Little House on the Prairie-ish, but it's actually just basically Kansas City. So I grew up there. And then after that, I lived in Texas for a while. I lived in Denton, Texas, where I went to college. And then I lived in Fort Worth for a while. And then I moved to Nashville. So yeah.
So what was it like? What was it like growing up in a little house on the prairie?
It's just very, I say it's Leave It to Beaver with a smattering of the 1% kind of thing going on. So just very suburban Wonder Years type of situation. But my parents were both music fans. My dad's a big jazz fan. And about when I was 10 years old, a friend of mine in my grade school, she started telling me about the Beatles and kind of got me introduced to the Beatles. And that's kind of where I really got into them. And I actually asked my parents for a guitar for Christmas. So they obliged and they just signed me up for guitar lessons, and kind of the rest is history there. Then a couple of years later, I used to watch a lot of VH1, and they used to show lots of old like rock and roll movies and stuff. And I found The Song Remains the Same, the Led Zeppelin movie. And that kind of was like changed my life, seeing that movie. So that's where I was like, I want to spend the rest of my life trying to figure out how to play what I'm hearing in this thing, and whatever was. So we've talked about this before, how they always sounded really dark and mysterious, and I always kind of wanted to capture what it was about them that had that vibe, and that's kind of been the musical search I've been on since then.
I think you have to find the wizard. Yeah,
right. I think Jimmy Page plays a wizard in that movie of some sort. So yeah, but that's kind of my background. And then when I got into high school, my high school had a really good jazz program, and I started getting more interested in that and decided to go on to major in jazz at the University of North Texas in Denton, Texas. So that's kind of the basic bones of the story there. So
when did you graduate?
I graduated from North Texas in 2006, I believe. Yeah. So it's been a few years.
And from there, you went to Seminary? Is that
actually? It's an interesting situation. So for 2 years after that, I actually played in a rock band there in Texas, and kind of transitioned out of that, and was trying to figure out what my next chapter in life was going to be, and wasn't totally sure if I was going to continue actually doing performance or not. And I thought that getting a master's degree in church music might be a good, I don't know, exit strategy or backup plan or transition plan. It wasn't super well thought out, but I did get the degree, and I have it. I have the piece of paper. So yeah, I went to a seminary in Fort Worth. Yeah.
What was it called? What is it
was
called?
called Southwestern Baptist Theological Seminary.
Wow.
Yeah, I know, right?
So you had to take a lot of Bible courses and stuff like that?
A few.
As well as music?
Yeah, you had to do like Old Testament, New Testament, and then you had to take like the 2 systematic theology classes and a lot of research-based classes. So it was pretty intense, but I got pretty into it while I was there. So
was that 2 years? 2 years there?
Yeah, I don't know if it's 2 years or not. I think it ended up taking me, when all was said and done, and I finally finished everything, it might have been about 3-ish. Maybe. I'm not sure. It takes a while. It's a lot of hours to complete. So
were you playing, gigging while you were doing that?
Yeah, I was. And it's kind of where I was always kind of torn between, I'm still busy playing, but I've got this other thing going on. I was never like totally sure which one I wanted to fully devote myself to. So I just kind of maintained both things at the same time. Yeah, but I continued to play all through that time period. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So did you grow up in church?
I did. Yeah, my family is Christian, and definitely grew up with that worldview and that mentality. So definitely.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's what I kind of figured that since you thought of going to like a seminary for a master's.
Right. Usually people don't pick that type of a school unless they have that background. Right, I don't think they want to be there. Right.
I didn't want to take that for granted, but
no.
That's what I figured.
Yeah, absolutely.
So why Nashville?
Well,
After
a couple
all
different
that.
reasons. Yeah, a couple different reasons. When I was close to finishing the degree, I was kind of like, well, I have an opportunity to kind of take a leap and move somewhere and just kind of like see if I can make it in that type of a town. And I already had family living in Nashville, which helped out a lot. And there's a lot of, I just appreciate all the different kind of styles of music. And I thought worst came to worst, I could, get a job, say at Lifeway or one of the publishing companies here or something. And I just thought I'd take a risk and see what happened. And it's worked out pretty good. So I just fell into a community of players that accepted me and just kept going from there. So yeah.
Cool.
Also New York and LA is extremely expensive, and just and so financially and culturally, I just felt like Nashville was the better fit of the three. So, yeah.
So what was your first gig here in Nashville?
Oh my gosh, I'm not even sure. I guess I will say the first time I really started meeting people, there was a trumpet player that I actually went to college with at North Texas who had moved here as well. And I didn't know him while I was in school, but I just happened to run into him somewhere, and I introduced myself. And after the fact, he sent me a Facebook message and was like, "Hey, I'm doing this big band reading session. Can you come play guitar on it?" And I was like, "Well, sure. I'm not doing anything." And when I showed up to this session, this reading thing, it was like all the horn players that play like on all the recording sessions in town, and same thing with the rhythm section and everything. And in addition to that, Tyler, the guy that was running the band that I met, gave me a chart that featured me and allowed me to both play and sight read music in front of all these people. So that was kind of the connecting point where I was able to perform for all of them and meet 20, 21, 22 people all at the same time. So
cool.
I always trace, it worked out really well. I always trace a lot of my opportunities. In fact, I would say about 80 to 90% of the opportunities I've had in Nashville back to that one particular situation. So,
yeah, that's great. You just kind of met all these people at one sitting.
Yeah. I was extremely fortunate because these are the types of guys that go and play a session and go home. They don't really go out and perform or go out and hang out and jam with people, So if I hadn't have had that opportunity, it would have probably taken a really long time to meet them and like ingratiate myself to them, where they would have trusted me to hire me for stuff. So
right.
So yeah.
Well, that's good.
Yeah.
And you just finished. Didn't you tell me you were doing the Miss Tennessee pageant?
Oh yeah, definitely.
How was that?
That how is it or what is it?
No, how is it?
How is it? It's pretty fun. It is. So I think for almost, I don't know if it's 40 or 50 years, they have had, it's a pageant, it's a beauty pageant, and they have had a live orchestra. So the music director for this pageant has been doing this since Vietnam, basically. And I know it's been a long time. And so it's just kind of something that all the horn players and certain crowds of people have known of it and played on it at various times. And it's just a lot of fun because you just get to hang out with a bunch of people and play fun music. And yeah, it's a great situation. So like the past 2 years, we got to back up Jason Sheff, who was one of the singers in Chicago, the band Chicago. He's been performing at it the past couple of years.
Right.
And then and also Jay DeMarcus from Rascal Flatts helped host it with his wife, who was a former contestant and winner on the pageant. So it's just a fun gig, and you get to hang with a lot of your friends, and it's kind of a little vacation in the middle of Jackson, Tennessee, basically. Yeah. It's a goofy one. Some people are kind of like, what?
Yeah. It's another Little House of the Prairie. So
yeah, we'll call it that.
Yeah.
Definitely. Little party house on the prairie, basically.
So tell us. Okay, you get to the gig, and you have rehearsals. Tell us how that works.
For that particular gig?
Yeah, for that particular gig.
Yeah, well, the music director, he's orchestrated and arranged all the tunes. Like, there's specific production pieces that they do that accompany, like, the introductions, the swimsuit competition, the evening gown competition, and then there's kind of featured numbers in there throughout. So basically, when we show up for rehearsals, we're just rehearsing these production numbers. And then later on in the week, we show up in the mornings and we rehearse. So there's a whole nother talent section to it. And sometimes the contestants will use the orchestra as to back them up when they sing. So we'll show up later in the week and we'll rehearse the pieces with the contestants who are singing with the orchestra.
Okay, so how many rehearsals do you have, and how many days?
Really, it's just 1 day of like the most rehearsing, and then a few short rehearsals later on in the week with those contestant pieces, and most of it's just performance. After that, we perform. I think we perform Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. So there's performances like 4 nights during that week.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because they have to like narrow it down to all the winners. They have to go through so many contestants. I don't understand how it all works, but I think that each night is a separate like competition or something. So don't quote me on any of that.
I don't know why I was thinking it was just 1 day of stuff.
No, it's a Tuesday through a Saturday.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
So do you stay in Jackson or do you come home or what?
Yeah, we stay in we stay in a Quality Inn motel when we're there. So yeah. So the hang is really important on that gig.
Well, yeah. I would imagine so.
Right.
So you get per diem and everything?
On this particular one, they just give us a lump sum, and whatever you want to spend on your food is up to you. The hotel's taken care of, though. Yeah. So.
Cool. Well, that's interesting.
Yeah, definitely.
I don't know why I thought you could do all this stuff in one day.
No, it's a process, definitely. So.
Mm-hmm. And this is your second time doing it?
No, that was my fourth year doing it.
That was your fourth year?
Yeah. Yep.
Wow.
I've become I think at this point I could say I'm a grizzled veteran on that gig. So. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so you're going to be doing it again next year.
I hope so. I don't know. We'll see. Who knows what the future holds?
Unless your solo career takes off. And
right, exactly, yeah.
You can't do that.
Right.
Anymore. Okay, so you, as a kid, you were going to church all the time, I take it. Mm-hmm. Were your parents, involved in church as, teachers or anything, or?
Yeah, they definitely were. Yeah, my mom has taught Sunday school for many years, off and on, and then my dad's been, chairman of every committee you could possibly imagine. I think at some point he's done it. So they were very involved, definitely, and they definitely took me, Sundays and Wednesdays, sometimes Sunday nights, so I was definitely there for a lot of it.
Mm-hmm. So at what point in your life did it become your faith?
That's a great question, because I know that a lot of my peers and friends that I grew up with in church, I felt like there was kind of always a transition turning point for them where they either had to decide whether it was going to become their thing or, whether they were going to kind of go their own way. And I've seen some that continued to be involved and some who, kind of fell away and whatnot. So I would say for me, that's a great question. I mean, I would say I got saved when I was 12 years old, and it's definitely a continuing process, but I always felt like it was my faith, definitely, from that point on. So
what happened that day when you were 12?
I mean, I think that was the first time that I had the experience where I really felt like God was definitely calling me to himself, where before I had always had the knowledge of it, and people had always told me about Jesus, but it was more just a academic knowledge and not necessarily I'm not sure the word I'm trying to say, but it hadn't really become my own. And I think whatever the experience was at that point, I felt like that was the time that he really called me to himself, and it became a real thing. So,
Do you know where you were?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I had been at church camp all week that week, and when I came home, I just really felt like this was the time, and this was the place. There's a time and a season for everything, and that was the time and the season for that. So
yeah, cool.
Yeah.
So how has your faith? What role has your faith played in your pursuit of your music and your career in music?
That's a great question. I mean, there are times when I felt like, especially at the transition point where I was deciding to go back to school to get a master's degree, I felt like that was a time where I was going to have to choose between faith and music, because the situation I had been in had been very, very challenging to my faith. And I felt like I kind of
playing in the rock band in Texas.
Yeah, it was like, where you're rolling around in the van and sleeping on strangers' floors, and there's just lots of crazy stuff out there. And I was just felt like at that point, like I was just being pulled astray, and I needed to kind of recalibrate with what my core beliefs were at that point. So at that point, I felt like I had to choose between music and faith. Now, actually, what I found out when I was in seminary is that you don't have to choose between music and faith, and they're actually completely intertwined with each other, because music is one of the ways that we contextualize our faith. You know, like all the hymns and everything we learn, it's like that was someone's personal way, through their personal experience, that they contextualized the theological knowledge that they had. You know, it was kind of funneled through their personal experience into a musical expression. So, so that was a big learning time for me to kind of rethink that and everything. And so nowadays I can think of it more that way. Music, it's not like I have to choose between music and faith. I know that music is actually what expresses my faith in a way that just straight words can never do, basically. So, yeah.
That power of music.
Absolutely. I can't remember who it was that said this, but they said singing is praying twice, basically. So singing is a way of adding depth and perception to like theological knowledge.
We lost her.
Hello?
Hello? You there? You there?
I'm here. Yeah.
Okay. You were saying you were about to tell us something that somebody said.
Oh, singing is praying twice, basically. So singing and adding music to text and words, you know, tends to make more out of words than what we could do, basically.
You know, when, people don't know this, but Lindsey and I were on a cruise together about 3 weeks ago.
Yes.
And it's a great time. And the way the dinner thing was set up, you were assigned a particular restaurant at a particular time of day, and you never knew who you were going to be sitting with.
Yeah, right.
So Susan and I sat with this couple from Michigan. The guy was a pastor. I think it was a pastor. And he had married into a family of 2 or 3 boys. And one boy wanted to be a bass player.
Oh, yeah.
And the pastor does play bass and had played in rock bands in his youth. And so he asked me what I thought about letting his stepson pursue music, being a Christian.
Yeah. What did you tell him? I probably just said you.
What would you tell him? And then I'll tell you what I told him.
As far as, okay, so what I think about his son as a Christian pursuing music. What would I tell him? Because his pursuit of music
it's like playing in bands, playing clubs, that sort of thing. That's where his head's at right now.
Right. Yeah. There's definitely all kinds of crazy things out there, and you definitely can be led astray if you don't have a good understanding of your purpose and God's purpose for you. Then I think it would be much easier to be led astray in those situations. But if you have that really secure knowledge that you were created in the image of God, and you have a special purpose to fulfill in Him, I think that gives you a clear direction of where you need to go within the context of a musical career. That's how I feel. If you have that knowledge kind of centered and that belief really strong, I think you'll be fine. So, yeah, definitely.
Well, they're definitely worried about him.
It's understandable. There's temptations, and I think it's easy to be accepted. You feel like maybe you have to conform to the people you're around. But I don't think you have to. If you have a clear understanding of who you are and who God made you to be, then you should be fine. So you will be fine. Not just should, you will be fine.
Yeah, you will be fine.
What would you tell him?
Well, what I did tell him was, all parents, especially Christian parents, take their kids to church, and you go to youth night, and you do all these things, and a lot of times the kids just do it because they have to. Mm-hmm. But then once they leave home, they may take a different course, a different path, you know, and actually feel some relief not having to do that stuff anymore. And so it all depends on the depth of the commitment to Christ, whether that kid has just been doing it because he had to, or because there was actually a spirit in him moving him towards believing and towards a life of faith. Right. So I said, if you don't know that exactly, and he loves music, if he loves music and he wants to play bass, maybe that's his thing. Maybe that's his calling to do that. And when he does that, he pursues that, his experiences at home and with his faith will definitely be challenged, because he's going to meet kids who are not believers, who never went to church, who have a whole different worldview, and it should cause some reflection, and those challenges will be presented to him that will test his faith or lack thereof. And as parents, you just have to have faith in God and give them over to that, and be there for them, to support them. But they are going to be challenged. That's definitely something that's going to happen.
I mean, I always say that they should honestly welcome the challenges to their faith, because if your faith is never challenged, it's not real faith, in my opinion. Right. It's like,
exactly.
Like, I feel like a lot of parents want to shield their children from hearing contrary viewpoints or contrary arguments or things that might rattle them. But honestly, I think those types of situations are faith-building situations. So For me personally, I welcome the discussions. I actually kind of welcome the uncertainties and the doubts, because for me, it just helps strengthen the faith itself, because obviously if we had all the answers, faith wouldn't be faith,
Right. You would need it.
Right, exactly. But obviously it's a pillar of what we believe. But another thing I actually thought of is that growing up, I actually didn't really have any friends who played music and were also Christians. And I think that had a huge impact on my worldview, because I just felt like Christians didn't play jazz, and Christians didn't really play real, like rock and stuff like that. They always played like CCM and stuff like that. So I went for a long time feeling that I was always kind of like a misfit, that I would never meet other Christians who liked the kind of music I liked and were into it. And it wasn't until much later in my adult life that I began to realize that there are other Christian musicians and artists who are great players and great musical artists and musicians that are out there. But it took a really long time. I think it's just because I came from a smaller church that didn't necessarily have a really strong music program there. So to me, it was just like, oh, Christians don't play music like how I think of music. So for a long time, it kind of warped my thinking that I always had to choose between music and faith a little bit. So, which was an interesting thing. But maybe in the context of your friend's son, if he knows other Christians who also play music very well, that can be a good influence for him. So yeah.
Well, see, my experience is, I came to Christ through music.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
Yes. I was hired by a Christian band to go to Wales to play for 2 weeks at a Pentecostal music festival.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, that must have been an experience.
Yeah, I wasn't a believer.
Yeah.
But when I came back, I was.
Yeah.
So that's my take on it. You just gotta let your kid go and do his thing, and hopefully
Right.
some of that upbringing will be brought back to mind in certain circumstances.
Do you feel like
difficult?
do you feel the music itself is what spoke to you, or do you feel that it was the message along with the music? Like, was it a preaching message that spoke to you, or was it actually the music itself?
It was a preaching message.
Okay.
Yeah, not so much the music. The music was rock and roll, and
Right.
it was like, okay,
Gotcha.
and the lyrics were not preachy lyrics. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
It could have been taken any way.
Okay.
And it was that was intentional because the band was trying to get a major record contract. So it had to be some double entendre there.
Gotcha. They didn't want to be too overtly in your face about it, I guess.
Exactly.
Gotcha.
So-
All right. Interesting.
So it's like, so I told him, I said, man, let him go. Let him do his thing. He's been picked to as a student at this music school in Detroit, and I said that in itself is some indication that he has some talent, So let him pursue it, and if that's what he wants to do, and and pray for him.
Right. I mean, either way, I wouldn't fight him on it because there's going to be a lot of resentment there from that as well,
Right.
So, they could, the total opposite could come out of it, and he could end up closer to God because of the experience. So,
Exactly.
right. So you shouldn't just assume that it's going to go in a bad direction, I guess. So,
Yeah. He might, from an unsheltered position, he might become more of a believer. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And discover it and have a faith of his own.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely.
And possibly influence the people he meets who are not believers.
Exactly. Yeah. It could be that is also his mission field, that
Exactly.
God needs him to be there. So, So yeah.
So, tell me, what's your favorite music to play?
Oh, that's a great question. I play many different kinds of music.
Yeah.
So it's hard first to categorize me as what kind of player I am because I do so many different things. But
okay. The one music when you're playing it, you feel at home and you're kind of going, oh yeah. It's like a place where you come to after you've been out in all these other things, and you come back to this one thing, and you take a deep breath, and it's like, cool, I'm back.
Yeah, I would say for that, it's definitely just playing straight up rock and roll, because that's kind of the most freeing and liberating experience. And it just kind of takes me back to why I started wanting to figure this all out in the first place. I always say that like Led Zeppelin is the alpha and omega of music for me. And it's like always what I know, the beginning and the end. It's always what I come back to remind myself, oh my gosh, this is why I started playing, because I love it so much and it's so good. So for me, playing rock music is just the most liberating and freeing type of feeling when you're playing. But I would say like playing jazz for me, because I play a lot of jazz, is more like trying to solve a puzzle, and like whether I sort of like got all the pieces there in the end, or it's a little bit more of a intellectual challenge for me there, and I enjoy that. but it's not quite as free as just like being able to like just bang out on a guitar, like guitar solos and things like that. And for me, actually, country music, I like doing that too. And it's kind of a hybrid between both, because sometimes, whether people realize it or not, some country guitar parts are actually pretty intricate and challenging, yet there's kind of that freedom in there of being able to kind of really like play hard on the instrument and do some stuff. So, so yeah, those are kind of the different hybrids of stuff I do. Definitely. But I would say rock and roll, like, especially like classic rock type stuff is, this, you know, the Beatles, Zeppelin, and anything where I can kind of play in that vein and play really cool parts and play like a fun solo in there and just really play hard on your instrument. That's kind of the funnest for me, and play really loud and stuff. So
French out some chords.
Right. Like in jazz, you can't nearly like, you just can't dig in on your guitar the same way that you can, you know, playing some sort of rock thing or whatever. So, yeah.
Well, speaking of intricate, have you seen John Coltrane's take on the circle of fifths?
No, but someone else was someone at that camp was talking about it, how it was like the weirdest stuff ever, and they had no idea what it was. There's some of the kids talking about it, so I'm going to have to go look that up, definitely.
Yeah, look that up. It's so out there, and there was this, I think it was Yusuf Lateef. He was a jazz flutist. I think he was good friends with Coltrane, and he said that was Coltrane's connection to his spirituality.
Oh yeah, I believe it. I mean, for anyone that's interested in jazz from a spiritual perspective, I mean, they should definitely go listen to his Love Supreme album.
Well, yeah,
because that's the whole concept is basically like his spiritual like mantra, or just kind of laying that all out there, his kind of creed or whatever. And there's all these thematic elements that go beyond the music. Like the very last track on it is actually where he set a poem to a melody. So you can read the poem as he's playing the melody of the poem. It's pretty amazing. It's a great record for anyone that just kind of wants a beginner entrance into jazz music. And maybe they come from a church background. I think that's a good one to check out. Definitely.
Yeah, Yusuf Lateef said that Coltrane was going to call that Allah Supreme, but he realized that if he did that, the record company might not release it, or it'd be too controversial. Interesting.
I mean, I don't know. Jazzers do weird things, so it could be true. It could be not true. I don't know that backstory, so.
Jazzers do weird things. They do.
Yeah.
So, what do you got coming up?
That's a great question. I'm doing a singer-songwriter I work with. I'm doing her Christmas record this month, and might have some other record stuff playing on some other people's records, but there's some of that, and just, you know, gigs in and out of town, and just all the random freelance stuff I do to make a living. So, so yeah.
So are you pursuing a solo career?
No, actually, just to clarify, at the beginning of the show, I think you said that I was a singer. I'm actually not a singer. So
that wasn't you singing?
No, that's a record I played on for somebody else, and they're singing on it. I just like threw it out there as an example of my guitar playing. So,
okay,
sorry,
all right.
Sorry for the confusion on that, but no, if I
well,
did,
do you sing?
No, not really. I mean, unless it's just easy gang vocal background stuff, I don't want to outpump my coverage on that one.
So you do sing background vocals. I mean, you can harmonize and
just
stuff.
A little bit. I don't want to get into a situation where I'm over my head on that. So let's not go any further into that. But if I did do a solo record, it would probably be a jazz solo record, because sometimes I write my own, you know, jazz pieces for like jazz quintet and things like that. So it'd probably be something kind of in that genre.
I saw you do a thing where it was like almost like bluegrass or something.
Maybe. I mean, it could be.
What was it? It was like a trio.
What would it have been? Was it in a video somewhere?
Yeah.
I don't even know what that was. I mean, I get asked to do so many different kinds of things. It could have been anything. Oh, okay. I know what it was. So a good friend of mine who's a bass player, his name is Jimmy Sullivan. He and I used to kind of do like get together and jam on like kind of work up tunes together as a duo. And every once in a while we do a video of what we did. So that was me and Jimmy and a pedal steel player. His name is Rich Hinman. And we did, it's a Western swing tune called My Window Faces South. That's kind of like a standard in that genre. So we were just like, hey, let's give this a try and see how it goes. And that's what that video was. Yeah. Yeah,
that's what it was. Western swing.
Yeah, I was like trying to remember what it was, but that's what it was. And it was fun. It's challenging to try to play up tempo without a drummer where you're so exposed like that. So that's kind of what we were always going for. It almost seems like we were trying too hard to we're like, how fast can we play and make this feel okay? So that's where we always were with that. So
well, you had the sound down. You had that guitar sound down.
No, it was fun to do. Definitely. Uh-huh. So yeah.
What are you working on today?
Today I have a gig coming up in August that's like an 80s tribute show type of thing. And I am the person in charge of making all the charts. So I was finishing up doing all the charts for that show. Today.
What's some of the music in it?
Oh, that's a great question. Let's see. So we have... So the deal is it had to be a tune from the 80s, and then they bring up these various artists, and they're like the guest artist that sings the tune, basically. Mm-hmm. So we have You Make My Dreams Come True.
You make my dreams come true.
Yep, that's it. Money for Nothing, Dire Straits.
Yeah.
You Can Call Me Al by Paul Simon. Another one, Bites the Dust. There were some good ones in here. Let's see. Yeah. Little Lies, Fleetwood Mac. I don't know if anyone knows. Against All Odds, which is Phil Collins, I believe. Right. Yeah. That one had some really cool jazzy chords in it. So that was
Phil's kind of sophisticated.
It is, yeah. It like never goes to the one chord, basically. So it's kind of trippy that way. You're like, is this finally going to resolve? And it never does. And let's see, Fight for Your Right to Party. And I know, really? Right? Yep. I'm just looking through the pile right here. Head Over Heels. I think that's Tears for Fears. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Who chose the tunes?
I'm not sure. I put in a few requests of my own, but it might just be the guest artists that are performing, pick the tunes. And it's the other interesting thing about this thing is that it's an all-female band and all-female artists sing. So it's been kind of fun. I did the one last I think it was October, and it was a great time. And it's actually called Flat Iron Maidens. Flat Iron Maiden. So and I think we're doing it at Mercy Lounge. I don't want to get my info wrong, but yeah. So it's just fun to be given like 25 tunes and try to learn all the guitar parts on it and nail all the solos and everything. So it'll be a good time, definitely. Mm-hmm. So,
are you the only guitarist?
No, there's two guitar players. There's a rhythm section and there's two keyboard players on it too, because obviously 80s music is extremely synth heavy. So. But everyone did a great job of doing their homework and coming prepared and everything. So it was a great time last time. I'm sure it'll be great this time too. So.
And when is that?
That is coming up in August. I don't want to tell you the wrong date. I don't have it in front of me, but it's coming up in August. So.
Okay, and it's called?
It's called Flat Iron Maidens.
Flat Iron Maidens.
Yeah, so it's like the heavy metal band Iron Maiden, but Flat Iron Maiden. Yeah. So, yeah.
I was driving home from Urbana, Illinois yesterday, and I'm searching the radio dial for anything, and I come up on this classic rock station. And they played some great stuff, I think I had it for about 15 minutes before I lost the signal. But their saying was, we don't always listen to classic rock music, but when we do, our neighbors do too.
Yes. So that actually is a great point, because I have a neighbor up the street from me, and he blasts music out of his garage all day long. So whenever I'm out running or whatever, I run by his house and he's blasting music. But the last couple times I've ran by, he's been playing Zeppelin, and I almost want to yell at him. I'm like, Zeppelin rules, but I don't want to freak him out either. But he definitely, the neighbors definitely hear what he's playing. So it's actually pretty fun. So
when I first moved to Nashville, I lived in this cul-de-sac, and my two daughters were 10 and 5, something like that. And on Saturday mornings, this guy across the street would open up his garage. He had a red Chevy truck. He would open up his garage to wash his truck, and he would blast like the Chevy theme song, Chevy truck theme song, over and over.
The Bob Seger one, the Like a Rock. Are you serious? Oh my gosh!
Very serious. And my kids would, it'd be very early in the morning on a Saturday, and they'd be going, "Dad, he's playing that song again."
Oh man, I don't know how long I could deal with that.
He eventually, they had to commit him. Eventually, true story. Probably
the Bob Seger made him go crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, if you listen to that many times.
Yeah, could have been that red truck.
It could have been, yeah. One time a guy came down the street and he was on a hoverboard and he was listening to Curtis Mayfield's Superfly, and I was almost like, that is awesome, because you don't really hear that too much in your neighborhood, and I just want to be like, you are cool, whoever you are. But I know the song again. But he was playing Curtis Mayfield, so yeah. So
tell us, what's been your biggest lesson since you've been in Nashville?
Biggest lesson?
Being a woman, being a musician, coming to Nashville, where, how many guitar players are there here in Nashville? I lose count.
10 billion, probably.
Yeah, finding your place in it and all that sort of stuff. What's the thing that you would tell people about your experience?
I would say have lots of patience, because I think everyone's experience is different, and some people come here and they're able to connect with everyone right away and get into a gig they really like. But then sometimes it literally is the 5-year, 10-year town where it might take a minute to actually meet the people and get worked into the system and start to climb the ladder. So to me, it all comes down to almost persistence and just kind of waiting your turn. I just have a mentality, there's a lot of amazing musicians, older guitar players here. And to me, I'm totally cool with learning from them, working beside them, gaining their insights and experience. To me, it does almost seems not right to try to like cut in line in front of them. I mean, they've been here how many years and have proved themselves over and over again. So for me, it's more about absorbing as much knowledge I can from them and, using that, putting it in my back pocket for future reference, definitely. So I was lucky that I fell in with a good group of musicians in, a good circumstance. But still, the wheels turn slow, and sometimes you just have to keep waiting and grinding it out. waiting for those cool moments to happen, so yeah.
So you haven't had to wait tables or anything since you've been here?
No,
That's
thank
great.
goodness. I mean, initially when I moved here, I did a couple of odd jobs, but since then, luckily, I've been able to just transition into only doing the music thing. And I'm sure it'd be a lot different if I had a family to raise and kids to take care of. But luckily, I've just been able to take care of myself and focus on, just doing, the gigs I love and all that stuff. So, yeah.
That's great. That's great. Lindsey, I think God has definitely blessed you and still blessing you. And I'm glad I got to meet you, and after you've been here for 6 years.
Right. We just now met. So
yeah.
But there's all these different circles of people, So.
Yeah. And I want to thank you for taking the time out today to be on the show. And
sure.
Whatever you're doing, keep doing it because you're doing it great.
Thank you.
You're like one of my favorite guitarists here in town.
Oh, thank you, Aaron. That's so sweet of you.